7 is suturing in an interrupted, simple fashion. So placing a simple interrupted suture in this Penrose drain, or what's called an FLS model, since we use it for the fundamentals of laparoscopic surgery, for intracorporeal laparoscopic knot tying. It's a handy model for this technique as well. We're using a 3/0 polysorb on a tapered needle. The suture strand is undyed and it is 30 centimeters in length. We load the needle as shown here. At about the halfway point or more, we load it at the tip of the needle driver. It should not be placed further back. The timer starts at this point. Then we will hold this part of the model and accurately place the needle through the pre-marked dot. We'll then hold this part of the model and exit, as shown here, right through the pre-marked target. We'll then turn the needle through, place our forceps down on the countertop. At this point, it is acceptable to place the fingers in the rings of the needle driver to form loops. However, we like to suture with the needle driver being palmed. But again, at this juncture, it is acceptable to place the fingers within the needle driver. We'll pull up our tail to a relatively short length, about 2 to 3 centimeters in length. We will then place our needle driver between the long tail and the short tail. We will make a wrap as shown here, once and then twice to form a surgeon's knot. Grab our tail. Notice I will then reverse my hands and pull the tail towards my left, such that that knot is square. Again, we place the needle driver between the short tail and the long tail, wrap over the instrument, pull the tail in the opposite direction, such that again we achieve a square knot. And finally, for our third throw, the needle driver goes between the short tail and the long tail. We do a wrap, we grab our tail, and we cinch it down in the opposite direction. We will cut these tails to about 1 centimeter to score this task. As you can see, the suture passed directly through the target on both sides, so the accuracy errors for that particular performance would be 0. There is also no gap between the two pieces of Penrose drain, so there's no air knot. The suture strand did not break, so we do not assess any error scores for that. And then finally, we test slippage if we can. If we're able to get our scissors within the loop of the knot, then we can burst it as we did before for our other models. This is relatively hard to do, but you can see that the suture strand broke around the loop and the tails remained steadfast. This underscores the importance of tying square knots. We will now show a few pitfalls with this technique. Certainly loading the needle wrong, as shown here, way into the back or way in the front would be considered a pitfall. We will load it correctly. Again, we do not want our fingers in the loops of the needle driver, but instead we want to palm it such that we have very good dexterity rotating this instrument 360 degrees. You can grab the model back here, but I do not suggest doing so. Instead, I suggest grabbing the model very close to where you want to place the suture. You can certainly 2-bite this if necessary and load again, but it is much more efficient to simply hold the model here and to exit appropriately, and then to turn through. Again, if we do not follow the appropriate protocol for knot tying using an instrument tie, the knot will not be cinched down appropriately. Pitfalls could include leaving the tail over here instead of reversing our hands for a square knot, or not tying it down tightly enough. Certainly if we do the loops in the wrong configurations, especially if we don't tie them down appropriately, we will leave ourselves, as seen here, gaps and knots that slip. So we want to avoid those pitfalls. In a real-time configuration, we will use the same suture strand, although it's a bit short, but for the sake of examples, you can do this relatively expeditiously by taking your first bite, your second bite, pulling through, then doing your 2 surgeon's knots, and staying relatively close down to the wound. And as shown here, the task is complete.